What's good, DEF CON? My name is Remy DeCausemaker, and I'm the Open Source Program Office Lead at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services from the Digital Service. It is great to be back here at DEF CON, back on the AIxCC stage. Thank you to the organizers, thank you to the volunteers, thank you to the community for this opportunity to share our story. Last year, I got to speak at my first DEF CON. We were just launching our open source program office. It was great to share that story. We were really hopeful that in time we would be able to share some exciting news about a vulnerability disclosure program and a bug bounty, but we just missed the PR deadline for it. So this year, our talk is about 1 year later, launching the first bug bounty at our federal agency. And to help tell that story, I've got an illustrious panel of guests that I will introduce now. So starting with Casey. Casey Ellis is the founder of Bugcrowd. They have been taking and doing crowdsourced security and turning it into a staple of enterprise and government defense. He's a 20-year InfoSec veteran, co-founded the Disclose.io project, championing safe harbor policies that let ethical hackers report vulnerabilities without fear of legal blowback, and shaping disclosure norms at CISO and beyond. His work connecting researchers with organizations at a global scale has made the internet measurably safer and cemented his status as one of cybersecurity's most influential voices. Thank you, Casey, for joining us. Next to Casey, we have Zwink. Zwink has more than 20 years of experience in the field, currently works full-time as an offensive security researcher in the financial sector. As a part-time hobby, loves the hunt for access control issues on bounty targets which seek to protect sensitive data. After 5 years of hunting bugs on the Bugcrowd platform, he's logged more than 1,200 issues spanning hundreds of companies and ranks in the top handful of hackers globally and is #1 in the United States for bugs logged. Thank you for joining us, Zwink. Sitting next to him is Keith Busby. Keith is our acting Chief Information Security Officer, at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. He's directing enterprise cyber, policy, privacy, and counterintelligence efforts for the systems that touch lives of more than 150 million Americans and process transactions totaling more than $1.5 trillion in the United States. Thank you, Keith, for joining us. And last but certainly not least, we have Leah Siskind. Leah was the Bug Bounty Program Manager at the Digital Service at CMS during the time we were launching. She is now an AI Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and all around just one of the best operators I know in the biz. So thank you for joining us, Leah. This is our panel. Thank you for joining us, everyone. All right. So we're going to start off with Leah, actually. So Leah, since you were helping to manage the program, can you help us set the stage and tell a little bit about the history and how we got here?
Sure. Thank you so much, Remy. Okay, just to get started, raise your hand if you know what CMS is. Okay, great. Okay, raise your hand if you know what CMS stands for. Okay, this is very normal, just so you know. CMS is one of the government agencies that impacts the most number of people's lives in America, and most people don't really know anything about it. So just to kind of set the stage, help you understand a little bit more about the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, I'll start with the breadth of coverage. So more than 50% of Americans are insured through CMS programs. So 62.7 million people get Medicare, while 82 million rely on Medicaid or CHIP for their health care. CHIP is for children. It is the backbone of the U.S. maternity services. Medicaid and children's health insurance programs, CHIP, finance 1.6 million births a year, so covering more than 40% of all the deliveries that happen in the U.S. each year. It is a transaction fire hose. Medicare fee-for-service alone processes 1.1 billion in claims annually, and that's roughly 3 million every day, or 35 claims per second. That's a little bit of info about CMS, and I'm happy to jump right in and talk a little bit about the significance of this bug bounty. This was the first time that we did it at Medicare and Medicaid Services, and this is basically the largest federal agency to do a bug bounty at this scale since Hack the Pentagon. That was like our number one go-to example to point to. Like they did it, we could do it also. It was roughly a 6-year process in approvals. It was very hard. This was not a foregone conclusion that it would happen. Getting the money was one very small piece of it. There was a huge approval process, and we hit a lot of walls, hit a lot of obstacles that we were basically not able to break through until Keith came on the scene. But just for people's awareness, I think the thing that really changed our ability to run a bug bounty was a unique partnership that arose between Bugcrowd and Homeland Security, specifically CISA within Homeland Security. That was a real game changer for us. And so to set the scene, in the end, we were able to run not one, but 2 bug bounties. The first one was for $75K. We had planned to run a 4 to 6 week program, and we were going to see how it goes. And we really hoped that anyone would pay attention. We didn't know if anyone would take the time to actually like come hack our sites. We went through $75K in about less than 4 days. We were not really prepared for that, and so we burned through that money so fast that we actually had to ask them to pause because we were still getting so many submissions and we were afraid we weren't going to be able to pay everyone. So this made us realize how effective of a solution it was going to be for us, and so we quickly begged for more money. We're able to allocate another $100,000, and there was one particular hacker really just cleaning up in this bug bounty, taking home about 75% of the bounty pool. So when I was lucky enough to meet people from Bugcrowd, I said, is there any chance in hell that you'll get this person a message that one day we'd love to talk to them about their process and what it was like to hack CMS? And so luckily he agreed. That's my little intro.
Thank you, Leah. And so you spoke a little bit about that partnership with CISA, and it's a really important story. And Casey, your work with Disclose.io was really a genesis that really began a lot of that. Can you give a little more background about the partnership and how that unfolded and the importance?
Yeah, sure. So Disclose.io is effectively a vulnerability disclosure policy standardization project. A lot of what it does is makes implementing a VDP that has the right kind of legal language in it so that the person running the program or the organization running the program feels like they're safe. But also the security researcher who's operating in good faith doesn't feel afraid to help out, because many of us who've been in this game for longer know that we kind of came from a place where if you're hacking something, you're automatically a bad person. So yeah, Disclose.io as a project seeks to make that super easy for people to implement. What ended up happening with that was we started working with CISA on the election cybersecurity guidance heading into 2020. That actually got folded into Binding Operational Directive 2001, which was a joint between CISA and OMB. And once that was dropped, about a year later, it went out to tender to work with bounty and disclosure platform providers to actually be able to help facilitate federal civilian agencies like HHS engaging the work of the hacker community. So that's kind of how we got here.
Great. Thank you for the story, but more importantly, thank you for helping to forge that path and provide a safe harbor for hackers and setting a standard for folks so we can participate and engage with communities like DEF CON.
For sure.
So that's a little bit about the background of the program. Let's talk specifically about the bug bounty. Keith, why was a bug bounty an important part of a proactive cybersecurity strategy? Like, what makes it important at our agency?
So what I love about the kind of crowdsourcing methodology of a bug bounty program is it opens our eyes to what we don't know, right? What risk is out there that we don't know, and why the crowdsourcing part of that is important, because it's all these different perspectives, right? A lot of government systems are maintained by the same type of folks. We follow the same processes, the same procedures. We needed some outside of our box line of thinking, right, to help us kind of find those different ways to discover this risk, right? And that's why having this relationship and being able to work closer with people like Zwink to get some feedback has helped us grow not only internally, but to reduce our risk from a public aspect.
Yeah, speaking of, considering, we were really hopeful when we saw that the leaderboard and, we saw there were a couple of prolific hackers. Me and Leah were sort of plotting and scheming and saying, like, it would be really great if we could get all these folks on the stage at DEF CON to tell the story. We don't know if they'd be willing to do it. I mean, we really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And, I'm sure a lot of folks would want to hear your perspective. We got some good stories to tell. So the first question we want to ask you is, what made the CMS bug bounty interesting? Why was it attractive? And maybe, what are some qualities that make bug bounty programs attractive generally for hackers like you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, I mean, I think for those of us that are out there hacking every day, there's usually a lot of hurdles, right, that we have to overcome, especially with federal government programs. You expect to have to go through these VPNs and these clearances and background checks and all these things. And the CMS program, it was the first of its kind that I had seen where they sort of just let down their guard entirely. It's a wildcard scope, star.cms.gov. They didn't have a lot of stuff out of scope. It was paying really well. And so, what's more fun than trying to hack the United States federal government, right? I mean, that's great. They have tons of data to protect, right? I mean, this is our social security numbers, our parents, our grandparents, aunties, uncles, all these things. And trying to go in there and find those bugs helps to protect our people. So I think it was a really attractive program for me because it seemed wide open. It didn't have a lot of guardrails, and it was a really great program to work on. But when I'm looking for programs to select, I'm generally trying to find things that have a good payment range. They don't have a lot of things out of scope, right? That says hack here but not here, because as we know, the adversaries are going to hack wherever you say don't hack. That's just the way it always works. So that's definitely a key thing to keep in mind. And with CMS in particular, like I said, I was just attracted to the fact that it was an important asset as a United States citizen. Like I said, my parents are on Medicare. It was really cool to be able to go through and find really, really important high-impact data breaches and problems that, adversaries may have found had we not had the opportunity to look at it. So.
Thank you for that perspective. So, one of the theme this year for DEF CON is access everywhere, right? And it's really important, at least to help in our situation inside of the federal open source community, to help to support that idea that being open and security through obscurity is not going to help you, and leaning into the risk. And we're really lucky to have a leader like Keith who is here to help us with that. And, there were some other challenges that we had to deal with, opening it up to folks around the world, for example. I think Leah probably remembers some of those challenges and can speak to them a little bit about, like, the trying to convince people that it should be access everywhere, right?
Absolutely. So, like I said before, this was kind of like a 6-year approval process. And along the way, we discussed various different iterations of what an acceptable bug bounty would be like at CMS. So, in the early stages, it was, let's find the most benign target possible that has no PII attached to it. And let's limit the hacker pool to be, well, first of all, we could never say hacker. We had to say security researcher. People would freak out. But let's limit the participants to Americans who have security clearances. So that's what we were starting with. And then luckily, by the time Keith came into his position, we were able to just knock down all those walls and do it properly. And he, despite a lot of pushback, was like, I insist on putting our most sensitive systems, including those as targets, because that's the most important information for us to figure out if these are vulnerable or not. So it took someone with his attitude and his leadership to actually make this happen.
Yeah, and thank you for being that type of leader, Keith, and getting those targets out there. What were some of the targets that we have been putting out there? What were some of the places where we were leaning into the risk at CMS, and maybe some context around that process? Yeah,
so initially it was recommended to just go with some smaller systems, like Leah said. My approach was, let's go with Medicare.gov, which serves 60 million users. I just figured that's kind of our biggest public-facing asset, and let's see how it could handle, how the program would live up to that. I also, I talked internally with my team. I want to give special credit out. They're not here, but John Quinca, JC, Dave Paradise, and Leslie Nettles, they all helped kind of grow this program and did a lot of the day-to-day work around it. So we took that approach to go with the largest elephant, right? The biggest system that we had, the most risk, both reputational and to the largest pool of American citizens, with the most data kind of behind it. And the other big kind of change that we took was I wanted to open it up for the most part globally for hackers or researchers within the Bugcrowd community. I didn't want to just limit it to American citizens with security clearance because, quite frankly, we already have those folks working for us. I don't need more people doing that type of work for us. So we had some legal hurdles that we had to get through. In the past, when we tried to do this, they wanted each individual researcher, as they call them, or hacker, to sign a BAA, a Business Associate Agreement, because if they discover any PHI, and we pay them, they are therefore doing work on our behalf. We decided to just accept the risk of not signing that, and that we would just treat any disclosure of PHI, PII to the security researcher as a incident under HIPAA, and then we would just have to notify the beneficiaries that had happened. It was a different mindset, a different approach to it, and so far it has held up well. We've had incredible success thanks to Zwink and others. We're now on our third iteration, I believe, of Bug Bounty. We started with the 75K. We went through that in 4 days. 4 days of testing. We had to take pauses because findings were coming in at a rate that both on the Bugcrowd side and the CMS side, we had to staff up to be able to validate. So the next iteration we did better, and now we're funding it at a level of like 350K per quarter. We're still going to roll out to the the wildcard star.cms.gov, try and test as much as we can.
Thank you, Keith, for that. And we're at DEF CON. I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience are the types of security researchers who are interested in, so what'd you find? What were the most interesting bugs? What were the best bugs? Maybe, Zwink, you could regale us with some of your favorite tales of conquest or discovery.
Story time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that we need these assets looked at out there, right? It's they're not super difficult to hack. They just need to be looked at, and I think people are afraid to go out there and participate in bug bounty programs and government programs because it's the government. But it really does need to be looked at. One of my favorite bugs that I encountered out there was it's sort of a hidden admin panel login, right? Admin panel for something related to Medicare that has access to millions of users' data. And it's your standard login dialogue, right? It has a username, password, and admin didn't work. Admin password didn't work, so I gave up. Not really, though. So, you had to tinker with it a little bit. And what I found was there was the strangest logic vulnerability I had ever encountered on a password dialogue in this thing. You enter an 8-character or longer password. It's like, that's not the right password. Okay, cool. You enter a 6-character password. It's always the right password. I had not run into this. So if you had a matching username and a 6-character or less password, it somehow had a function on the server side that was like, that's right, you win. So then 2-factor dialogue popped up, right? So I can't get in. It's protected by 2-factor. I gave up again, but not really. So what I found was after iterating through a bunch of usernames, some of them didn't have 2-factor provisioned. So that meant that I could actually assign my phone number to the 2-factor account for the compromised account with a 6-character password. And so now I'm in as an admin to the Medicare system from the internet. What could go wrong? So that's why we need to look at these things, right? And that was just one of many examples of things that you encounter that were really strange. I don't think automation would have found that. I'm not a big user of automation. I use it to script things like Python for me a lot faster than I could do by hand. It's a little too fast, it's creepy. But I do leverage that to speed things along. But I don't think automation, where in its current state, would have found this bug because of how quirky it was with the responses. It's one of those context, creativity-driven bugs, right? And that's, I think, the area I live in. I'm manually testing layer 7. I'm out there pulling apart applications, looking through the JavaScript, digging, always on the same app until I think I've exhausted that application, then I move on to the next one. And I think that's the value of the crowd, right? We all have different skill sets. I'm a broken, access control authentication kind of guy. That's the land I live in. There's other guys out there that are like cross-site scripting ninjas, all things cross-site scripting and cross-site request forgery and RC. I'm the broken access control guy. So we need more people in the crowd to hunt on assets like this to get the complete, security profile, right? Just a part of it, but I had a blast.
That's been patched, by the way.
It's all been patched.
I mean, just want to put that out there in the
Probably.
universe.
Hashtag it takes a crowd.
Very interesting. Those are the kinds of stories that we didn't know. We weren't sure if we would find any bugs like that, but we were hopeful that by engaging with the Bugcrowd community, the hacker community, security research community, folks like you out in the audience today, that you could help us find things like that to help secure the data and the information of the national healthcare system. So that's why we're here at DEF CON, is to engage with folks like that. So if that story is interesting to you and you have those types of skills, our vulnerability disclosure program is up on Bugcrowd right now. We also have a bug bounty program that's currently being run. This is our 3rd iteration through multiple administrations. This is still a top priority, cybersecurity. So please reach out and let us know if that is the kind of opportunity that you're interested in, because we need all the help we can get to secure the software supply chain and the data of the nation. So in our last little bit here, wanted to open it up across the board, just to, if there are any takeaways or anything that we want to leave the audience with before we open it up for questions. Open stage. If anybody has takeaways, who wants to start?
Sure. So how many folk in this audience here have received a bug report? Wow. He has. Excited. Have received a bug report they didn't expect? Yeah? How many in this group are actually hackers here, like working on the researcher side? Just trying to figure out who we're talking to. Okay, cool. So for folks that are defending, I think the thing that's really important to remember, this is amazing because governments take time to get used to ideas like these. Hack the Pentagon wasn't an overnight thing. It was a result of 3 or more years of constant effort from a bunch of people before the pilot, and then it kind of grew from there. Yeah, the charging rule changes we saw out of DOJ in 2022 was a project that we kicked off in 2016. So, like, things move slow, but they do eventually get there. I do think for folks that are in the room that are defenders, ultimately between now and the heat death of the universe, you're going to have someone come in from the outside saying, hey, you've got a vulnerability that you didn't know about. And the question becomes, like, what's going to happen when they do that? If they know about it, do they know how to get in contact with you? Do they know they're welcome? Do they know what to expect in engaging with you? And really what that comes down to is making sure that everyone, my personal belief is that like bug bounty is effective for everyone. Not necessarily everyone is ready for it, but there's different ways to tone it down and get started. On the other hand, a vuln disclosure program, which is basically just see something, say something for the internet, that's something we should all be doing. So looking at Disclose.io, if you need to, partnering with companies like Bugcrowd to actually run those programs, that's something that I think we should all be thinking about.
I just want to jump in on that. I think one of the biggest issues, and one of the issues that we still struggle with internally, not just at CMS, but in the federal government, and probably across the industry as a whole, is people treat vulnerabilities as bad. Right? This is a bad thing, and I look at it as a good thing, right? Because now we know about it. If we didn't know about it, then it's bad, yes. But kind of accepting that risk of celebrating findings, right? And so we have to work with our business owners, we have to work with their system owners, and that's the narrative that we approach it with, is like why this is a good thing. It's, we found this, now we know about it, now we can, from an enterprise standpoint, put in capabilities to try and protect it, but from a system development standpoint, change our processes to catch this earlier on. And I think that it's less about technology, it's more about process procedural.
Yeah, it's a really important point because people write code, people are awesome, like we do amazing things, we're also not perfect. So when you take that and use compute to scale that idea, vulnerabilities are a part of the result of that. So it's not like a vulnerability is a bad thing, it's molded. It's inevitable because you've got human creativity as part of the process.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember, no matter what your assets are, if they're internet connected, somebody can get to them, right? So if you're trying to not run a program because you're worried about findings, it would be better for people like me and the crowd to find these bugs than the bad guys. If it's on the internet, the bad guy can get to it. It's not a hard thing. So it needs to get looked at. So if you've got assets out there, put the full scope, out there for hackers to look at, and let us harden it for you. You know what I mean? Don't hold back, because if you're a company and you say, I want you to look here but not there, I've seen it more times than I can count. It's always the not there that gets hacked, and then they show up in the news.
You can't slap a tool in to protect everything, right? So it's not, cybersecurity is a big business, right? You can spend a lot of money on tooling, but it's not going to fix everything.
Yeah, one thing I want to add is so much of technological innovation in government and progress is just based around people. A lot of it is still culture change. So if we were in a normal time with the U.S. federal government, I would say everyone here, please consider coming into the federal government, finding ways to get involved. Now is a kind of a weird time, but eventually it'll settle down. And I think everyone should consider, ways to get involved, whether it's hacking from the outside or helping from the inside, because a lot of it is just having the right person in the right place at the right time with a willingness to take on risk. That's incredibly helpful.
We're not there yet, but if we keep engaging in conversations like this and keep working with the security research community and the open source community, we're going to get there faster. And I cannot thank you all in the audience enough for being here to hear our story today. Thank you to everyone who makes this event possible. Thank you, DEF CON, for having us again. Thank you to all of our participants on the stage. Big shout out to our leadership and the folks back home at CMS. In case you watch this later, we thank you for your service. If you're serving in public service position right now, you are appreciated. Thank you to the hackers who continue to contribute. Keep sharing code. Let's unite hackers on planet Earth and hack the planet. Thank you, DEF CON.
Thank you, Remy.